There's a specific kind of silence that follows rejection. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet collapse of something you had spent years building toward. Andres Magpayo knew that silence intimately. He had heard it in a Madrid conference room in February of 2026, when a Spanish Liga ACB agent closed his notebook, set down his pen, and told him, without cruelty but without hesitation, that he simply was not built for European basketball. 8 words, 11 seconds, 12 years of work, dismissed. What the agent did not know, what no scouting report, no combined result, no footage package had ever captured, was what Andres did after rejection. He did not argue. He did not plead. He boarded a 14-hour flight back to Manila, sat in the middle seat because that was the only ticket left, and stared at the clouds below him for 3 hours without sleeping. He was 26 years old. He had one window left, and somewhere over the South China Sea, he decided he was going to climb back through it. Rafael Soriano had been placing players in the Spanish Liga ACB for 8 years. He had an eye for talent, not just physical talent, but the kind of character that survives a European season, the discipline to adapt to a system built on collective sacrifice and defensive accountability. He was not a cruel man. He was a precise one, and when he looked at Andres Magpayo's film package in that Madrid hotel meeting room, precision told him what sentiment could not override. The player was not ready. Not for this league. Not for this era of basketball. The Liga ACB of 2026 had evolved beyond a traditional center archetype. Clubs were no longer searching for paint-bound giants who could protect the rim and anchor a half-court defense. They were searching for switchable fives, big men who could slide onto guards, cover perimeter actions, recover in transition, and defend 40 feet of floor without becoming a liability. Andres was exceptional inside the paint. His shot-blocking instincts were among the best Soriano had ever scouted from Southeast Asia. But perimeter defense was a different language, and Soriano believed Andres did not yet speak it. He told him directly. That was the thing about Soriano. He never softened the verdict to protect the prospect's feelings, because false hope was its own form of cruelty. He said that Andres' footwork in the post was professional grade. He said his wingspan 7 feet and 3 inches was a genuine weapon. And then he said that without demonstrable lateral mobility on the perimeter, no Liga ACB club in 2026 would carry the risk. The notebook closed, the meeting ended, and Andres Magpayo became a name filed under a category that never gets revisited. Bulacan in March is warm and unhurried, the kind of place where mornings arrive slowly and evenings linger long after the sun is gone. Andres came home to his family's house in Marilao, the same house where his father had worked double shifts at a textile factory to buy him his first pair of proper basketball shoes when he was 14. He sat in the living room under the slow ceiling fan and did not speak much for 3 days. His mother did not push him. She had raised him to know that some things needed to settle before they could be faced. On the 4th morning, Andres called Rommel Custodio. Custodio was a former UAP defensive specialist who had transitioned into private training after a knee injury ended his playing career at 23. He operated out a gym in Mandaluyong that had no signage on the outside, a corrugated metal roof, and 2 industrial fans bolted to the wall where windows should have been. He was not the most famous trainer. In Manila, he was something more useful. He was the most honest one. Andres told him what happened in Madrid. Custodio listened, asked 2 questions, and told him come Monday. The first question Custodio asked was simple. How much time do you have? Andres told him 6 months before the next major scouting window in Europe. The second question was harder. How much of your identity as a basketball player are you willing to tear apart and rebuild? Andres did not answer immediately. He looked at the worn floor of that Mandaluyong gym, at the scuff marks left by 1,000 players who had stood in the same place with the same question hanging over them. Then he looked up and said, all of it. Custodio nodded and started writing. The program Custodio designed had one thesis at its center: size without range is furniture. Andres was not being asked to become something he was not. He was being asked to excavate something that had always been there, but had never been properly developed. Natural quickness was not the goal, because natural quickness at 26 could not be manufactured. What could be developed was anticipation. the ability to read a ball handler's shoulder angle before the drive, to time a hedge before the screen fully set, to position a body in precise location where the next action was going to happen before it happened. The first 4 weeks of training were humbling in ways Andres had not anticipated. He was a professional basketball player, a 3-time PBA All-Defensive Team candidate, a man who had trained his entire adult life. And yet the lateral movement drills Custodio designed exposed limitations that no interior defensive drill had ever revealed. His hip flexibility was inadequate for perimeter slides. His first step angle was consistently late by a beat. He fouled on contact that a disciplined defender would have avoided. Each session ended the same way: Custodio with a clipboard, Andres with burning legs, and a growing list of corrections. He came back every session. By the 5th week, Custodio introduced what he called mirror work, not the standard defensive slide repetitions, but a drill where Andres faced a guard who had been instructed to attack at full speed, using every hesitation move, crossover, and change of direction available. No help defense. No rotations. Andres alone, his wingspan, and the obligation to stay in front. The first week of mirror work was a study in failure. The second week was a study in adjustment. By the 3rd week, something had changed in the geometry of his defensive stance: a lower center of gravity, a slower reactivity that paradoxically arrived at the right position faster. His PBA teammates noticed it first. During the team summer league camp in June, a point guard who had been torching Andres in practice pick-and-roll sets for 2 years suddenly found himself covered, not smothered, covered, which for Andres was an entirely new vocabulary. The guard drove left off the screen, and Andres switched cleanly, absorbed the contact without fouling, and redirected the play toward the baseline where help was waiting. The coach blew the whistle and ran it back. On the 2nd repetition, Andres did the same thing. On the 3rd, the guard pulled it back out and looked for another option. That had never happened before. The data confirmed what the court was showing. In 46 track defensive possessions during summer league play, Andres surrendered an effective field goal percentage of 34% against perimeter isolation actions, a number that 8 months earlier had been closer to 52. The improvement was not an accident. It was not luck. It was 12 weeks of corrugated roof gym work distilled into a measurable competitive outcome. Custodio presented the numbers without ceremony, the same way he had presented the problems. Here is where you were. Here is where you are. Here is where you are going. In September of 2026, a private Pro-Am event was quietly organized in BGC through a network of international scouts and agency contacts. There was no public calendar listing, no social media announcement. 12 teams, 3 days, and 48 hours of basketball observed by people who held the professional futures of players in their clipboards. Rafael Soriano attended on the 2nd day with a specific purpose of evaluating 2 guards from the Visayas region who had been flagged by a partner agency in Barcelona. He had not come to see Andres Magpayo. He did not know Andres was in the building until he was already watching him warm up. The matchup that rewrote everything was assigned without ceremony. Andres drew the defensive assignment on Cristian Florescu, a 6-foot, for a Romanian wing currently on the radar of 3 EuroLeague clubs, a player whose mid-range pull-up game and off-ball cutting have been drawing comparison to some of the more productive wings in the 2nd tier of European competition. On paper, it was an unremarkable assignment. A Filipino center on a European wing. Everyone in the gym who noticed a matchup assumed it would be a mismatch. The scouts near the baseline barely adjusted their postures, and then the ball was inbound. The first stop was a right wing isolation. Florescu had 20 centimeters of space and initiated his drive left with a sharp jab step designed to freeze the defender's hips. Against a traditional center, the jab step would have created the half-second of hesitation needed to generate separation and a clean pull-up. Andres did not freeze. He had seen that jab step in 100 mirror work sessions. He recognized the shoulder dip before the drive, slid left before the contact angle opened, and by the time Florescu elevated on his contested pull-up, Andres' wingspan was positioned across the shooting lane. The ball hit the back of the rim. Clean defense. No foul. The play continued, and no one called attention to it. But 3 scouts near the baseline had looked up. Soriano's pen had paused. Florescu reset and came back off a pick and roll on the left side, a more complex action designed to generate either a mismatch or an open three. Andres switched onto the ball handler, tracked the pull-up thread across the arc, and in the precise moment of hesitation between drive and pass, reached in with his right hand. Clean strip. No contact on the arm. The ball skipped free, recovered by a teammate, pushed into transition. Two scouts exchanged a glance. The third stop arrived with 11 seconds left on the shot clock. Florescu had been held scoreless for 6 consecutive possessions, an unusual reality for a player of his caliber, and the frustration was visible in his body language. He isolated at the top of the key, looking to create space off the dribble against what he expected to be a retreating big. Andres did not retreat. He held a position at the arc, mirrored every directional change of exact hip discipline, and stayed low through 3 consecutive hesitation moves. When Florescu finally elevated on a desperation fall-away, Andres' wingspan was already there, not contesting theatrically, just present, perfectly, suffocatingly present. The shot went wide right. The shot clock expired. The gym went quiet in a way that was different from ordinary quiet. It was a silence of recalibration, of people updating a mental model they had held confidently and now found insufficient. Soriano had stopped writing on his clipboard during the second stop. By the third, the clipboard was at his side entirely. He stood near the baseline and watched Andres jog back up the floor with the same unhurried discipline he had maintained for the entire session. No celebration, no acknowledgement, just the posture of a player who understood that the work was not finished because one sequence had gone well. After the session ended, Soriano did not move toward Andres immediately. He stood near the water station for several minutes and did something he rarely did during scouting events. He reviewed his own notes. Specifically, he found the file entry from February. He read what he had written. He compared it against what he had just witnessed with his own eyes in real time, against a legitimate EuroLeague-caliber scorer, under no control conditions, with nothing artificial about the defensive resistance he had observed. In 8 years of scouting, he had seen perhaps 5 players make a genuine structural transformation at the professional level. He was looking at the 6th. He found Andres near the exit, still in his training gear, water bottle in hand, making no attempt to be noticed. That detail registered with Soriano, as well the absence of performance. Andres was not scanning the room for reactions. He was not positioning himself to be approached. He was doing what he had apparently been doing for the past 8 months in a gym with a corrugated roof in Mandaluyong working, and then waiting without announcement. Soriano introduced himself as though they had never met, because in every practical sense, the player standing in front of him was not the same one he had dismissed in February. The conversation lasted 11 minutes. Soriano did not apologize, and Andres did not ask for an apology. What they exchanged instead was more valuable than sentiment. It was clarity. Soriano told Andres exactly what he had seen in February. The limitation was real, the assessment was accurate, and the rejection had been made in good faith. Then he told him exactly what he had seen today. The transformation was real, the defensive range was genuine, and the limitation no longer existed in the form he had documented. He asked if Andres had representation. Andres told him he did not. Soriano took out his phone. The Liga ACB market context in 2026 made the conversation urgent in ways that extended beyond Andres as an individual. Several clubs in the league had completed mid-season transitions to positionless defensive scheme systems that required their centers to credibly cover positions 2 through 5 on certain possessions. The demand for switchable 5s who could anchor a defense without becoming a perimeter liability had outpaced the available supply for 2 consecutive seasons. Soriano had 3 open client briefs from Spanish clubs actively searching for that profile. He had been unable to fill them. He had been looking in the wrong places. The contract was signed in October 2026 with a mid-table Liga ACB club based in the Canary Islands. It was not a maximum deal. There was no press conference, no viral announcement clip. It was a 1-year proving ground offer with performance clause, the kind extended to players the front office believed in, but needed to verify at the European level before committing further. Andres signed it without negotiating the terms that were not in his position to negotiate. He understood exactly what this was. It was not a destination. It was a door that the closed notebook had said would never open, now open, and he walked through it without looking back. By December of 2026, the numbers had begun telling a story that no scouting report had predicted and no agent's initial assessment had allowed for. In 31 track defensive possessions against perimeter players during his first 8 games, Andres had surrendered an effective field goal percentage of 31%, a figure placing him among the top-performing centers in the league at that specific defensive position. His club's defensive rating had improved by 4.5 points per 100 possessions since the start of his minutes. The head coach told a Catalan Sports Daily that Andres had restructured the way the team could construct its defensive identity. What Andres had brought to that Spanish club was not a new skill invented from nothing. It was something older and harder, the particular stubbornness of a person who had been told precisely what they lacked, had chosen to believe the diagnosis but reject prognosis, and had gone somewhere quiet and unglamorous to do the work that does not photograph well and does not trend on social media. The wingspan was always there. The reading of angles was always there. What Custodio had built, session by session, on that worn Mandaluyong floor, was the architecture that allowed those existing qualities to express themselves in a European context. In Marilao, his father watched the game streams on a laptop propped against a stack of books on the dining table. He did not understand the tactical commentary. He did not speak Spanish and did not follow European basketball standings. But he understood the scoreboard. He understood when his son's name appeared on the screen beside a defensive statistic the broadcast considered noteworthy enough to display. He had worked double shifts for years so that a boy from Bulacan could have the right shoes for the right courts. He had not imagined that those shoes would one day cross the floor of a gymnasium in the Canary Islands. He watched, and he said nothing. He did not need to. For the young Filipino big men watching from university gymnasiums in Quezon City, from barangay hard courts in Cebu, from rooftop courts in Davao where the rims have no nets and the concrete is cracked from years of sun, the lesson arriving from the Canary Islands was not about wingspan measurements or lateral quickness percentiles or European scouting combined formats. It was about the architecture of a response, about what you do with a closed notebook, about whether the verdict of someone who evaluated you on a given Tuesday in February has the final authority over what you become by September. Rafael Soriano updated his scouting methodology after the Magpayo signing. Not dramatically. He was not a man given to dramatic revisions, but he added a line to his evaluation template category he had not previously formalized because he had not previously needed to. It sat between physical measurements and tactical assessment. It read simply, documented transformation capacity, the ability of a player to receive an accurate diagnosis of their limitations and convert that diagnosis into structural development. He had seen it perhaps 6 times in 8 years. Every time he had seen it, it had been the thing that separated the player who made it from the player who did not. The gym in Mandaluyong still has no signage. The corrugated roof still expands and contracts with the afternoon heat. The 2 industrial fans still do the work that windows could not. Rommel Custodio still trains players there 3 mornings a week, still asks the same 2 questions, still waits for the answer to the second one before he starts writing the program. Sometimes a player comes in having just been told that they are not enough, not fast enough, not versatile enough, not European enough. Custodio lets them finish the sentence. Then he hands them a resistance band, points to the far baseline, and tells them the only thing that has ever mattered. Show me what you do next.